Hey guys, it's Down South Fishing again, back out here at the lake. And I'm out here fishing this fallen timber right now. I've worked my way down the bank of this lake, trying to get into some deeper waters. Nothing seems to be in the shallows right now. It hasn't been sunny enough the past couple of days to bring anybody up. It's rained, the water's heavy stained, and this timber is about the only visible feature on this lake. So I'm going to try it here, keep moving deeper. I've already, like I said, gone down this whole side of the bank to this point, and I did see some boils on top of the water, some signs that carp are feeding with their nose down, their tails up. It creates this very distinct ripple in the water when carp are feeding like that, so that's a good sign. But I imagine most of the bass or crappie are going to be deeper just because of the general weather. Today I'm fishing with a football headed jig. Whoops. With a blue, or black, I guess, black with blue glitter crawl attachment. I did do the cut on this jig, the finesse cut, and thinned it out. So I'm just going to keep making some casts here, maybe get something. That's not quite where I want to be. Try that again, huh? Just trying to keep everything slow. Just barely lifting the jig off the bottom. So I'm just hopping the jig along. And I've been trying some different cadences. Cadence is very important when bass fishing. You know, you might do a hop, and then drag. Or you might do, you know, a hop, and just kind of shake it for a minute. And shaking's can be very productive. It's like that bully in school, you know, stick his finger in your face and go, "I'm not touching you, I'm not touching you." It's kind of the same principle with bass. If it pisses them off enough, they'll eat it. You need to thoroughly search these wood piles. When I drag it, I'm just dragging it real slow across the bottom. You know, over these stumps, over these fallen trees. And the weed guard's really good about not getting hung up, even though I did get hung up a little earlier here. But it was very easy to get back. You bent the hook a little bit. That's why you carry pliers with you. You can bend the hook back to its position and just keep on fishing. One thing I like to do when I'm fishing for bass in the winter is when I'm dragging the jig, if I see my rod tip load up, I'll stop and let it pull the jig the rest of the way. It keeps it nice and slow. And the same goes for when I'm hopping the jig. The rod tip blows up, I tend to stop and let it do the work for me. I'm still in the weed beds, not on the rocky bottom of the lake. And I don't know if you can see, most of the weeds have died. Probably had something to do with the lake freezing last week, but normally this is all solid weeds through here. This is a very interesting lake. There's not another lake like this in the state, at least in my area of the state, where it's shallow. I mean, it doesn't get more than 10 feet at the dam, and I think it's about 4 feet. It's about a foot right here in front of me, and it kind of steadily drops off. I mean, this whole thing, I haven't really felt a ledge or anything on this side of the bank, so if there's a ledge, it's pretty far out there. I don't see a lot of videos on YouTube about bank fishing. I see a lot of videos, people fishing from the boat, fish finders, things like that. And that's just not my cup of tea. And so I guess this is your fun fact for the day. America is one of the few places that people fish mostly from a boat. When you go to Europe or Japan, it's all bank fishing. And of course, Europe, especially England, is mostly fishing for carp, and they use a lot of chum, so they bring the fish to them. In America, we go to the fish. But one thing about bank fishing is obviously no fish finder. You know, there's no way to tell if there's fish here or not. You just have to look and say, well, this looks like a fishy habitat, or this is a fishy spot, and you just have to throw some stuff and see if it works, and then move on. And I've found some little tips and tricks that help me find the fish, other than the obvious, you know, fallen timber, rocks, things like that. It's look for where the fish are feeding. Sometimes you can see, fish coming up and hitting the top of the water, pushing shad up. Like I said earlier, their tail sticking up when they're rooting down in the mud. And another one, and probably my best tip I could give you about bank fishing, is look for birds. The predatory birds are going to be feeding on those same bait fish that bass and crappie and catfish, every fish is feeding on in this lake. And if you can find them and get to where they are, there's a good chance there's going to be some bigger fish hanging around, being opportunistic feeders, waiting on a fish that the bird is injured and didn't catch. And one thing I do, what you just saw there, is when I'm getting ready to retrieve my line, I'll actually swim these jigs back, because a lot of times they can look like a bluegill or some other bait fish, and sometimes you'll get a strike from that. You wouldn't get a strike. The bass could be falling all the way down and not hit it, and then when it starts to swim, it'll hit it. So I was talking about predatory birds earlier, and I doubt you guys can see this, but right across the lake on that down timber, there's a blue herring sitting. And I just saw another one fly. Oh, he's way down there. He looks like he's going all the way to the other end of the lake. But I guarantee you there's some bait fish there. Now I can't get over there. I have to cross the creek, and there's just, I've been over there before. There's not really a place to stand and fish. But what is going on over there is, you see this hill, and the original creek comes from over here and cuts down below that, and the original creek channel is still there. And that is where a lot of the bigger fish will hang out, especially the blue catfish, the bigger channel catfish. They'll hang out in that creek channel. And I don't know why that is, but that just seems to be something else that's true about bank fishing. If you can find the original creek channel, 90% of the time there's going to be fish there. And it's like that here. It's like that at the other dammed lake here. Dams up the river to form a lake. And I hate that lake. I never go. Everybody's out there on jet skis and speedboats. And I mean, people just don't have etiquette these days. I mean, I've been fishing there, and people have pulled up on a speedboat and let their kids swim right next to my bobber. And when I pack up and leave, they're just kind of like, "Oh, we didn't mean to scare you off." I'm like, well, I wasn't going to be responsible for when I accidentally set my hook in your kid's foot when he stepped on my line. It's just people these days. But anyway, that's my soapbox moment. And I just want to show you these birds and what I meant by that, looking for predatory birds, before I continued. Alright guys, I think I found some more timber to fish. So I'm going to see if there's anything here before I move on down to the deep water and try out this new lure I got. Now I'm hopping my jig over to this fallen tree. When I get a little closer, I'm just going to shake it for a little while. Because it should be getting a little deeper here. Alright. Sit there and bounce it around. I've noticed that bird's not doing anything. He's just chilling out over there. So I'm going to assume that there's no bait fish there because he's not eating. Looks like he's just trying to keep warm. This is one of the warmest days we've had. I think it's in the 40s with a front coming in. I'm supposed to have some rain, and of course I got snagged up. There we go. This afternoon, I'm coming through the timber now. These jigs offer really, what you can feel with a jig and braided line is just amazing. With monofilament, it'd be stretching and you just wouldn't feel it. You wouldn't feel what you're in contact with as well. I really like braided line. Some people say it's rough on the rod guides, but I haven't had a problem with that. And I use this is 20-pound or 30-pound test spider wire that I have on this rod right now. I really liked, this is kind of funny, I really like the cheap stuff, the Zebco Omniflex braid, but Walmart doesn't carry it anymore, so I don't use it anymore. And in my town, there's just not a lot of tackle stores unless you're a fly fisherman. We do have a great fly fishing store which offers any variety you could possibly imagine of hand-tied quality flies, guide service, kayaks, canoes, Yeti coolers. Everything you could want if you're a fly fisherman, but I dabble in it, but that's just not my cup of tea either. I'm imitating crawfish because typically in the winter here, the bass will hone in on those crawfish patterns. So that's what they're mostly feeding on. If I catch one, I'll show you how you can tell. The crushers in the back will be raw from crushing the shells and just having to eat the crawfish. It's pretty easy to tell what they've been eating in the winter that way. And I imagine most of the shad have died off, even though I don't see any dead shad out here like I normally would after such a cold spell, so they must have all died off earlier in the year. I would mount my camera on the rod, kind of give you a better view at what I'm doing, but you don't want to listen to braided line going through a rod, or any more you want to listen to just silence. And anytime I put music on my videos, YouTube decides to flag me for a copyright infringement. So anybody knows a way around that, if you could post it in the comments, I'd much appreciate it. And one thing about this is you want to, and I'm guilty of this by the way, fairly often, of doing this too far, letting my rod get too high. You want to keep your rod tip low when you're jigging like this, because if a fish hits, you want to have, you want to be able to bring it back without pulling your shoulder out of line. And if it's up like I've got now, I don't have that far to really set the hook. So that's something I have to always remind myself when I'm fishing like this, is to keep my rod low. I'm just going to try to swim this one back. Maybe I'll do something. Just kind of a slow swim, putting a little action on it. So it looks like a wounded shad or wounded bluegill. And I'm really amazed how well these football-headed jigs, or even an arky head, will cut through timber like this and weed without snagging up. You know, if I was using a crankbait or a spinner bait, I would have lost it by now. There you go. Sometimes it feels like it's snagged, but it just comes right off. And the same about rod height goes for dragging, except instead of height, you know, you don't want to go too far over. You don't want to go way over here, because you're not going to have a lot of power to set the hook. Well, wasn't having any luck on the lake, but I did find a hook, a bobber, and a worm. This was snagged up in some of the weeds, and worms are my absolute favorite bait for just about every fish. So I've come down to the creek, which is higher than I've ever seen it, and we have a lot of water coming over the dam. And between the highway traffic and this water, it's pretty loud, so I don't know if you can hear me or not. But we're going to go down here and see if we can't catch us the first fish of the year on a nice little worm that someone so kindly broke off and left hanging in some weeds in the water. Now the spot I normally stand is completely submerged, so this is where I normally catch the most fish, but the current might be a little too high today, so I might have to go to the lower part below this riffraff and riffle here. But you never know unless you try. Might need to put more weight on too. Now when I walked down here, there was a blue herring. I spooked it before I could see if it was feeding or if it was just chilling here. I'm really hoping that it's been feeding, and that there's at least some brim, maybe catfish down here. I know the catfish like it here, I know the brim like it here, I know the bass like it here. I've even caught a chub or two, but mostly brim and catfish and spotted bass really like to hang out down here. Of course, there could even be some crappie. I don't know what comes down here this time of year, but there could be some crappie out here too. No. If I lost that worm, it would have been sad. What happened is my line got wrapped around my rod here. Well, I'm going to walk down to the lower part. I've had some luck there before when it's really swollen, but it's never been this high before. Even looks like the water came through here earlier this week, probably during all that rain, and washed out these rocks. We went from a little bit above, a little below zero temperatures to being about 60 degrees with a hurricane warning or a tornado warning. We don't get hurricanes in Georgia. So, typical Georgia weather. Now this thing's just flooding. I'm going to snag up on something and lose this worm before I catch a fish. I can tell. I'm trying to find a nice calm spot to cast into, you know, where it might be holding some fish. Man, this is how I wish it was in the summer. Maybe you could get some bigger bulls and channels up here then, probably some bigger bass. The brim have always been a good size in this lake though, or this little creek. If I was right, there's no way I could get to the other side of the bank today. Because there's the path right there. You have to cross the creek over these rocks and go up and over and around. Oh, thought I had something. It's just my luck I'd find a free worm, and the current would be too fast for winter fishing down here. There is a drop off right about there. See if I can't come up a little even with it. Well, this is going to take a little. I'm going to have to fix this problem. Remedy is what I was going to say. I want to remedy this problem. Alright guys, I got some more weight on there. I think I've got enough to keep it on the bottom, because there's too much weight for my bobber. This is the only bobber I have. See that bird? He just flew down here and saw me and flew back. So down here, there must be some fish down here. And now it's just going to be the waiting game. Or that I'm going to get snagged up on some rocks game. Bollocks. Well, let's just see what happens. Kind of hoping that the current's going to unsnag me, but I don't think it is. I'm going to unsnag me. Let's see what I lost. Got the bobber. Got the split shot, got the hook, got the worm. And all is good. I'm just kind of dipping it in around these rocks, see if anybody's home. I'm gonna go up here. There's always interesting stuff up here. This is a nice view. Whoops. Coming back at me. Well, it looks like I got a spot where it's going to hold. I can kind of bounce it up and down, keep it out of the current. Let's just hope there's a fish here. Of course, I don't know how fresh this worm is, so it might not have any smell left on it. I'm pretty sure it's dead. And honestly, I've never fished with an old worm before like this. Sometimes I'll fish with them when they get a little leathery on the hook for catfish, but then it's just, you know, maybe a day tops old. This could be anywhere from a day to 5 days old, I'd say. Maybe even older. Could have just thawed out. Who knows? Well, I didn't catch anything of that worm, and it ended up deteriorating and off my hook. So I started jigging for crappie up here, and I've caught myself a nice log. What I tied on for crappie, and it looks like it's got beat up just then, is a Roadrunner jig. Whoops, that could have been bad. It's a little seahorse jig head with a nice little spinner on it. Red hooks, some people like them, some people don't. I couldn't care less about them, honestly. Still looking for that first fish of the year. Now, I've seen a lot of people fish for crappie in this very spot, so, and there's definitely signs. There's a jig head over there. The fish are starting to break the water, so I'm just gonna keep fishing for crappie on the way back to my car and hopefully not get rained on. Like I said, there is a storm coming today, which is just going to bring the water level here even higher than it already is, and it's really flowing today. So I'm going to adjust this camera so maybe you can see a little better down in the water. Alright, so maybe you can see what I'm doing a little better here. I just let my jig fall under an open bail if I'm jigging off a structure like this till it hits the bottom, and just simple lift it up, let it fall back down. Hopefully I won't catch that log again. I've already got somebody's line once, pulled it back up here. Nothing really salvageable, just had a big slip sinker on it. I wanted that log or something. Yeah, I got the log again, I think. I'll probably sit here and do this for a few minutes and backtrack down the bank, casting out. Maybe I can get me a crappie. Of course, one important thing when you're bank fishing is to ask other fishermen you see on the bank where the fish are. And everybody has told me this is where the crappie tend to gather in the winter. It's down here by the stam. And that makes sense. Any food's going to be washing this way, so why wouldn't the fish gather here? And I know the catfish, darn log again, are usually on this side of the dam and go up shallower as the day goes. But with it being overcast like it is today and the temperatures, it wouldn't surprise me if they moved to shallower waters. And see, wait on some wind. Looks like the wind's blowing this direction, which makes sense. That's the direction the storm's coming in. So really this side of the bank should have the warmest water, because all the warm water is getting blown, well, it's getting pulled down and blown this way. So that's another plus for this side of the lake, because this is where the warmest water should be. This is the time I really wish I brought my jigging rod out. I mostly only use it when I'm fishing off locks or just high structure in general, where fish like to hole up in the winter. 12 feet might be a little long though for this. Just try casting it out and dragging it back to me. A lot of times the crappie will hit it on the fall. Of course, I really like to use minnows for crappie. It's hard to find good minnows in this town. Now, the next county over, has just the best bait shop. I really can't speak enough of that guy. He's great. He fishes a lot. He knows, you know, what's biting that day. Tell you exactly what to use. He's just an all-around great guy. There you go. But of course I don't want to spend that money on gas to drive up there, and rather just come out here and fish. Next time I'm out here, I might just bring a crappie rig and some minnows. Jig this side of the dam. I feel like this dam should be undercut a little here. Might hold some fish, but it's not as deep as you'd think it would be. Supposedly this lake's only 10 feet deep right here, but I'm not even getting down that low. Of course, I could just be bumping up against something again. Well, I'm going to continue on down this side of the lake, and I'll be back on in a minute. Okay, I'm over here at this little brush pile, and I don't know if you can see, but in the water there is a tire. And when I see something like that, I make a mental note of where it's at, so when it comes to spawn, I can come here and I know that there's a tire submerged, possibly holding fish that are nesting. So I look for surroundings, and you know, this is pretty obvious. It's the standing timber closest to the dam. There's a tire. Not the easiest little fish attraction to fish at, though. This is going to sink really slow. It's pretty light. Now, bank fishing for crappie is, in my opinion, harder than bank fishing for bass, because they school up almost year-round, and they can be anywhere in this lake. And this isn't necessarily a large lake. I was classified on the small side of medium. But still, when you're talking about, you know, a school of fish, they could be holed up on the other side. And I never, you know, no way to tell if they're here. No fish finder. Nothing like that. You're going to see me snag up a lot now. And get my line tangled. There we go. Just crappie fishing through the brush. This isn't a weedless or snagless jig, and the jig's torn up from the other guy's line. It's still usable. No reason to throw on new plastic if the old one's still good. I tend to fish for crappie a little faster than I'd fish for other species. Next time I come out here, I might bring some catfish bait. I like winter fishing for cats too. I like winter fishing all around, honestly. Some people they say it's too slow, but any day on the lake's a good day to me. I thought I had something. Anytime I feel anything bump a jig, I'll tend to set the hook when I'm crappie fishing, because they're really light biters, and they're called paper mouths for a reason. Yeah, sometimes you're gonna set the hook in a tree, but it happens. Another tip for bank fishing: fish where you're going, not where you're standing. I've caught a lot of fish fishing out at angles instead of just straight out. You can fish these jigs in any way you want to, really. Normally when I use jigs, I'm on a tall structure like back there, and I just bounce them up and down. But you can drag them, you can swim them, you can bounce them, you can shake them. Crappie are a lot like bass. Not quite as big, tastes a little better. And normally aren't released when people catch them, which is a problem to me. I think you should just release all the fish you catch. You know, unless you need to eat a fish. You know, if you're in a survival situation, or if that's, you know, your main way of getting dinner for the night, I understand. I'm not a die-hard catch and release person. I've eaten every fish out of this rivers around here and lakes almost. Personally, I like bluegill the best. Bass isn't bad. Some people say it tastes green or something. I don't know. Haven't eaten carp. Gar is fairly edible. Drum tastes just like red snapper. I mean, not red snapper, just like redfish, because it is a redfish, pretty much. Walleye is very tasty. Crappie's good. Striper's alright. White bass is delicious. I love white bass too. It's good food. I'm making myself hungry talking about this, so I'm just going to stop. Another bank fishing tip is you have to know when to stay and when to move on. And I'll tend to stay at an area for maybe 10 to 15 minutes during the summer, 20 to 30 minutes maybe during the winter, if it's, you know, a brush pile like this. This is why I keep turning the camera on and off, because I would end up like a 5-hour video and my camera would probably die. That bird's just sitting over there still. Oops. These are tough little jigs. I haven't even bent the hook out yet. And I'll tell you, Superline, I know a lot of people go, oh, the fish will see it, the fish will see it. You're going to spook the fish with using braided line to fish for crappie, and you need to use 4-pound tests and this and that and the other. The water is so stained in my area, I could probably get away with 50-pound tests. In fact, I've caught bluegill on 50-pound tests fishing for catfish before, so I know it's possible. People overthink fishing. It's really just Simple. Just go out, relax, have confidence. Confidence is the main part of fishing. Confidence with what you're fishing with, confidence with your gear. And being able to locate fish without a cheater. Kind of important too. Oh, we got off the stick. One thing that bank fishermen I think are a little better at than boat fishermen is getting unsnagged. I think you also get a little better at fishing through cover, fishing from the bank, because you're going to fish a bunch of cover. You're not going to get out to the middle of the lake and just turn your cheater on and go, oh look, there's fish here. I'm going to drop my bait right down in front of them. I mean, hell, if I had a boat, I would have a fish finder too, but no, this is kind of like a purist fishing, I always feel like. Should just go all the way, get a fly rod, or use my fly rod rather, and I have to realize that I'm not setting hook on bass anymore. Might also be good. Because if that was a fish, I would have just thrown it out onto the highway, I think. You get on your mindsets, you know, I'm going out fishing for bass today, and then you decide to change it, and you feel something bump, and you lay into it like you would a big old hog, and it just doesn't work too well. Now I've caught somebody's line. Always makes me wonder what was on it. You can find some good stuff just scavenging what people have snagged in trees. I found really nice crankbait in one of these trees the other day. You don't find a lot of spinners though. I hardly ever find spin baits. Found a Mepps inline spinner. I like Mepps, good brand. And that's like a $5-6 lure right there. I got it for free. Hanging out of a tree, just snagged it with a bare hook. Pulled it over to me, cut the line. Of course, you can break the branches off sometimes. And there's no good way to fish that tire. Not with this bush here.